So that was Brian Dable talking about Tommy DeVito and Tommy Sweeney in the post game conference. Unfortunately, it's hard to hear the reporters' questions, but basically they were saying, "Do you know that they went to the same high school?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course." So they both went to Don Bosco Prep in New Jersey, Powerhouse in New Jersey, and they hooked up for a touchdown. And Tommy DeVito actually didn't look too bad in that game. So we are the 3U Giant fans. We're doing the Lions review. We're looking forward to the Panthers preview. We got some Jets news to talk about. So it's your host, Scott, Giant Mike, Cardone, and Jets fan Novak. So before we get into everything, let's give a shout out. And this one, it'll be a popular place that people have heard of, and there's a lot of history behind it. Not a lot of people there, but hello, Latrobe, PA.
Oh.
So Latrobe, population 8,060, home of what beer? Do you guys know?
Yeah.
Rolling Rock.
Rolling Rock.
Yeah.
So
the green bottled Rolling Rock.
And two famous people, Mr. Rogers and Arnold Palmer.
Wow.
Arnold Palmer's from Latrobe?
Latrobe, PA, Arnold Palmer.
Oh, interesting.
And Mr. Rogers. It's also the place where the Steelers have their spring training, or I guess they're practicing for preseason. What do I want to call it? Training camp, maybe?
Training camp?
Practicing for preseason. Yeah.
And it was actually a railroad town, and it was named after Benjamin Latrobe, who was an engineer for the B&O Railroad. And we all know which board game B&O is.
B&O. Yeah, that's what side of the board? Yeah, it's of course from Monopoly. What side of the board is B&O on? Is that on by Marvin Gardens? But is that on that side? Where's B&O?
I want to say it's near like St. James Place and those, but I could be wrong.
Oh,
I don't know.
Near the St. James Place is pretty ritzy, man. It's not,
Isn't St. James Place the purples and the reds, or
the
purples and the yellows?
Mediterranean and Baltic, man. Those are the purples. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
there's two different purples.
There's purples, and then there's like the light purple.
Yeah. There's the fucking dirt cheap purples, like the first one's on the board.
Yeah.
Right.
Mediterranean and Baltic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Those are that's the dirt cheap ones, and then
Oriental, Connecticut, and Vermont.
Yeah. The light
blues.
Yeah, and then Indiana, Indiana Ave. There's a couple. Yeah. I don't know. By the way, it's not. I do not play Monopoly. I haven't touched a Monopoly board in 30 years. At least.
It'll be cool. Like have a Monopoly board, but like with all time like players. You know what I mean? Like say it's your team. Say like there's a Giants edition, and like the cheap pieces are like like Ron Dane, like the shitty players. And then as you go along, you have the more talented guys, more legendary players around the board. Eventually, you get to like LT and Sims and all that. Like that'd be cool.
That probably exists. I don't know if because there's a Monopoly edition for everything, man.
Yeah, there is actually.
That's what we should do. That would be a good one sometime. We should do our Jets and Giants Monopoly board. Okay.
Right. Well, shit, we'll just make up our own.
What are Baltic and Mediterranean and what are the other ones? Boardwalk and Park Place.
Love the Ron Dane ball.
Yeah, the railroad. You can have like a fumble railroad. Yeah.
The Ron Dane thing is funny because I was listening to you guys last week, which by the way, awesome job last week, guys. That was I laughed my ass off. Thought that was great. But you guys were like, I'm sitting there listening and I'm working, and you guys are talking about your most embarrassing jersey, and I'm sitting here laughing. I'm going, I have the best answer, and I wasn't on. I have the Ron Dane jersey.
You did.
You had a Ron Dane jersey?
I have the Ron Dane jersey.
I think we had talked about that, Mike, another time. Like we're going through something about jerseys, and I remember you said you had our Dane jersey. Like, good God, hey, not so bad at the time, right? Thinking that the guy was going to turn into something, but. Man, how do you go out in public with that thing on?
I did the same thing I always do when I buy an embarrassing jersey is I rip the nameplate off and call it a Hampton jersey, right?
Right, 27. Stuff.
So we had a couple preseason games. Giants played the Lions. Jets played the Panthers. Not my, guys, it's preseason. The majority of the starters didn't play. You got a lot of activity in the joint practices the week before. So I think that's where the coaches are putting their stock in what the starters are doing. The OL was a mixed bag for the Giants. Wyatt Davis and Corey Cunningham were very bad. on the offensive line. Schmitz looked very good in his preseason debut. I know Mike will be very happy about that. Bredesen looked decent. Azudu, inconsistent, had some good plays and some bad plays. And on the defensive side, Pinnock looked fantastic. I thought Banks looked good. And other than that, it was one of those games where I looked at it as being a Giants win because our so-called starters beat the Lions starters. But other than that, it was a pretty boring game to watch. I mean, there wasn't a lot of action. I thought DeVito looked decent. Not much to take away from that one.
No, it's classic preseason football where it's just, we talked about it last week. It's downright almost unwatchable. You know, I was thinking, like, how do coaches even assess what they're seeing out there, in these games? I know they see things and have to evaluate, obviously, stuff that certainly I don't, as a fan. But the biggest thing, one of the takeaways, Graham Gano, I'm telling you, this guy is just automatic and money. I mean, we have a legitimate, just like money accurate kicker. So that's nice to see that Gano doesn't miss a step, that guy. He just makes everything. So one little piece of, takeaway from that game. Yeah, aside from the punt return that we gave up, third quarter or something, the game was just hard to assess. I was thinking Tommy DeVito. I'm like, wasn't he one of the T-Birds in Greece? Wasn't it?
Oh, my God. I thought you were going to steal my line. I have written down here Tommy DeVito, and then it says Billy Joel song character with a question mark.
Right, there you go. Yeah. I kept thinking DeVito. I'm like, that was definitely a T-Bird, wasn't it? With Danny's Zubek. I can't remember what Travolta's name was. But
I am not going to admit
something like it was Danny something. Movie. That's all I know.
Danny Zuko.
Was it
Zuko? It was Zuko.
Yeah. Close. Yeah, I was close there. Yeah, I was thinking Zumac or something. I don't know, but that's all I kept thinking about. Tommy DeVito. I'm like, what's it? That guy, he's a T-Bird, right?
He would have known it if he played for Ramapo. He would have known it. No, yeah. what's your fake
Ampipe?
Ampipe.
Yeah,
that's right.
He would have known the name and the number.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. But that's what I was taking away from a preseason game. It's unwatchable stuff, and like I said, but there was nobody on the injury report or anything like that, so that's good.
I couldn't disagree more. That a devastating loss to set the season off on just the wrong foot. I'm not sure how you recover from that. I want to fire the special teams coach. It doesn't matter that those guys out there not tackling on the punt won't be on the team, or probably aren't on the team now. That's all coaching. This is going to be a train wreck this year. The writing's on the wall. Blah 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 blah. That's what I learned from the internet this weekend.
Yeah, Overreaction Monday.
Yeah.
By the way, did you see Dable's death stare to the special teams coordinator that game?
Yeah.
Tell me again, Dable doesn't want to win. This is a preseason game, and after that touchdown happens, he's giving him the stink eye, walking right through his peripheral and following him all the way out.
Yeah.
With that big red face that Dable can get when he's angry.
Oh yeah. He's got
Novak,
a big head, Dable.
For the Jets, I mean, a drubbing of the Panthers, and we're going to get to this in a minute about Chase Young, but not Chase Young. Is it Chase Young?
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young. I knew I had that wrong. But it
doesn't really matter.
Bryce Young looked like the rookie he is. The Panthers never threatened, even with their second and third strings, and the Jets coasted to a victory.
Can we really think that Bryce Young is going to be something? Is he going to be the next Justin Fields on this podcast?
Oof.
I mean, the guy, what he's like 5'6". I just look. The Jets were in the backfield on every single play, and that was their second team defensive line against the Panthers. Like, I agree with Scott has said this before. He cares about the first 5 minutes of the game because that's when the starters are playing. Same thing. Jets own the Panthers for the first 5 minutes, won the game. Who cares about that? They had a lot of good players that showed up. Abanikanda looks like a real deal. Their defense was fantastic as usual. Their defensive line was great. There's so many different players that I could go into, but at the end of the day, I think the Panthers looked like, and it's preseason, I get it. They look like one of the worst teams in the league. I don't they gave up their whole future for this guy, and I'm not going off of just this game, but what is he? Like I said, 5'6". He doesn't seem to have any kind of presence. He wasn't that great in college. You put in a great team with a ton of weapons. I don't know. I don't know if Panther fans are listening, but if I were a Panther fan, I'd be pretty nervous about this situation.
You've got to be scared. And the thing that's got to scare you, Novak, that you just said it's like the Jets' second team defensive line, and they were taking free shots at that guy. Like
oh yeah,
he if that were a full game, he would not have finished.
Absolutely not.
And I think that the coaches would have loved to have seen him out there longer. And I think, getting around the end of the first quarter, they're just like, get him out of there. Get him out of there. He's going to get killed.
What are these teams going to learn? Like, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but like Pat Mahomes sat for a year, right? Justin Herbert sat for a little bit. Like some of these other guys have sat for a while. They've already announced Richardson as the starter. They've already announced Bryce Young as the starter. Why?
Yeah.
Why are they doing this?
I think
They're not
Stroud
gonna
is
be
the
any
starter
good.
too.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah, Stroud is
you
starting,
guys know
I
better. Why? Why do they do this?
It's funny because for every Joe Burrow that's out there, you have guys like Trey Lance, you have guys that they take a while to develop. And I don't understand why you can't have someone like an Aaron Rodgers that sat for a few years behind a guy to learn who ended up blossoming. Look even at the Giants with Daniel Jones. I mean, of Daniel Jones had a great rookie year in Shermer's offense. And then he regressed because of the talent around him. And you know what? If he was not strong mentally, that would crush a guy like him. And look at not Derek Carr, but his brother David. David was the starting quarterback when the Texans came into the league, and he just got basically shellacked. And he was a good quarterback, a very good quarterback, and could have been he was our backup for a little bit and was fine in that role. But as a starter, the guy just gets PTSD because of all the hits that he takes. I'm with you, Novak. I don't understand why these teams, what is so bad about letting a guy sit for 2 years?
Or even, how about 6 games? Like,
yeah.
Why are we starting in week 1 with some of these guys? It doesn't make sense. Like almost every single example of this has failed. Zach Wilson, another example, had to play week 1. Sam Darnold had to play week 1. Why? Like, why are they doing this? Doesn't make sense to me.
You're right, because it's not, these teams, they're not in win now mode anyway.
No.
So why not then develop for, hey, you're making a great point. Like you said, even half a season to just at least like get in the rhythm of how the game, the game speed, the cadence, all those things that happen on an NFL sidelines, in the locker room, during the week, that because the regular season, as we all know, is so much different than preseason. So yeah, I don't know. It's like they're really setting these guys up for failure. I don't know. I think these coaches and GMs, I think they feel like they're just under pressure to start these guys immediately because they may, I hate to use the word, like, oh, they mortgaged the future, what have you. But, we know what the Panthers did to move up to number 1 and all that. So I think they're under the scrutiny of, I think, the social media to say, well, why the hell did you do all that if you're not going to plug the guy in week 1? I swear a lot of the influence of coaches today, we see it all the time, even in-game decisions where, and now it's preseason now and it's who to start. I think a lot of this, guys, has to do with the pressure of social media. It's incredible. I think that's part of it.
I think that's right on, Cardone. I think the other thing is this. Players are more fragile than they used to be. So, and I don't mean physically fragile, I mean mentally fragile.
Mm-hmm.
So, Green Bay was able to, with Brett Favre maybe kind of reaching the end of his prime, but still clearly with a handful of years left at least, draft a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who was a highly regarded quarterback, and Brett Favre could handle that. You get a player today, Aaron Rodgers' talent level, and you bring him onto a team and say you're going to sit for 2 or 3 years, they'll be asking for a trade in that scenario. It's just not the way it works anymore. It's a shame. It's bad for quarterbacks. It is. I mean, I don't know that this has, Aaron Rodgers himself, who benefited from coming up under Brett Favre, got tweaked when Green Bay would flirt with another quarterback, whether drafting or, he benefited from it. But when he was then the starter, the role that Brett Favre was in, he didn't like it, them bringing in a young guy behind him. And I just think there's more of that these days than anything. It's your starter feels threatened. To Cardone's point, the media goes nuts as soon as your starter falters. We're giving this guy all this money. We gave him draft picks. You got to get him in there.
Yeah.
It's the gratification now world we live in has ruined this.
How long did Eli sit behind Kurt Warner?
6 weeks.
It was about 6 weeks, 6 games.
Something like that.
Because the Giants, I think they were 5-2 or 5-3. They just lost to the Bears, and they put Eli in. And at that point, the Giants actually had a possibility to get in a playoff spot. And I think they looked at the team and realized we're probably not going to get a playoff spot, and they put Eli in. And he had a couple disastrous games right away. I mean, he had a terrible one against the Ravens.
Yeah.
Again, it wasn't immediate. It was a 6-week window. And you're talking about Eli Manning, who was one of the more pro-ready quarterbacks coming into the league.
Yeah. I always thought that was a good move by the Giants. And I think it would have been a good move by the Panthers and these other guys, the CJ Stroud, is, hey, you draft these guys, and then in free agency, you just get a veteran warhorse. Like, like the Giants did with Kurt Warner. And to Novak's point, just let the guy slide into the season. Don't put him in there at 0-0 and get his confidence just destroyed when the team's 1-7 and he is just can't crawl out of the hole either on the field or from the standings. And most of these guys that get drafted high, I think they even mentioned this in the Panther Jet broadcast. Like, this is going to be a huge culture shock for Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Dude has never lost. He probably hasn't lost a game since high school. I know he had a couple losses at Alabama, but I mean, he just doesn't know how to bounce back.
And they have the perfect guy. They have Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Let Andy Dalton play 6 weeks. Yep. That's all. 6 weeks. And then the fans will be calling for him. He'll come in. Fans will be cheering and along with Sir Purr, and he'll get in there and he'll
pounding.
He'll get the 7,000 fans, the Panther fans going.
Well, that's the thing too. Indianapolis has Gardner Minshew. What does that guy have to do to get a starting role for a couple of weeks? If you look at San Diego when they had Justin Herbert, they had Tyrod Taylor, our guy, who punctured his lung before the first game, getting an injection. But if you think about it, there was a blanket there. Jones started week 3 for the Giants?
Yeah.
Did he? I think he came in relatively quickly. I don't know if it was 3 or 4, but Eli started the season. They gave him a quick hook, and then Jones came in. These guys that start the season off as the starters, I think you put a ton of pressure on them even before camp breaks, and I don't think the results have been good.
And not just on the quarterbacks, but like you're Frank Reich. This is your first year in Charlotte, and I'm focusing on Charlotte. That's the situation I'm most familiar with. But you got to find a way to get some wins. I mean, you are not going to get a huge. You're not going to get an automatic 2.5 years just because you've got a rookie quarterback.
No,
that's not free anymore. It used to be free. You used to build in some free losses with that situation. It doesn't matter if Bryce Young doesn't look serviceable by week 8, the fan base and the media is not going to say Bryce Young sucks. They're going to say this coaching staff sucks.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. They got that new head coach there. They got a lot of new parts in going down the street there. So I can't wait for the season to start, guys. I know we got a few more weeks to go, but preseason, it's just tough to get through all this.
Yeah. Well, and I almost think that the further we go into these joint practices that are happening and the preseason games taking on less priority, that I think we're going to see more emphasis put on joint practices. And we could see where we go down to 2 preseason games and then 1 preseason games. And I could almost see preseason games by 2030 being eliminated or something like that. You never know what's going to happen. But I look at these games almost as a waste of time. I mean, I am not engaged in them at all. Novak, the Jets came to Carolina this last weekend. You didn't go to the game. If the Giants came to Carolina, I don't think I'd go to the game. I have gone in the past and I've not gone. But why should I spend $50 to do something I could sit on my couch and watch when the NFL Network replays it, instead of going and watching a bunch of guys? It's a scrimmage.
I didn't watch the Detroit game. It wasn't even on. I was out of town down near visiting a buddy from our show. Won't name names, but I was visiting Lowe. He's down in Merle's Inlet, and we weren't even. Yeah, we looking at, of course, getting updates on our phone, but we weren't. The game wasn't on anywhere.
Yeah.
So but we were. It's funny, we're talking about Bryce Young. All of a sudden, watch him light us up Friday night.
Yeah.
Panthers met death on
Right.
Friday night. So
that's
the Jets just destroyed the Panthers. We have them on Friday night this week.
That's one of the funny things I saw today, like on NFL Network. They were talking about headlines, and one of the headlines for this weekend was Bryce Young will rebound. How do they know Bryce Young will rebound? What is that based in?
Yeah.
Bryce Young looked pedestrian against the Jets. He might look pedestrian against the Giants. It depends who the Giants put out there. I think the Giants are actually planning on playing their starters for the first quarter.
Good.
Second preseason game.
Yeah,
Right
get a couple
now-
series in there.
Right now, that comment sort of reminds me about some of the stuff we would say about Daniel Jones. How do you make that statement? I mean, he couldn't. That really isn't even on him. He's running for his life. The entire. I don't know if Bryce Young had 5 plays where he had been given some time back in the pocket, was able to scan the field and throw the ball. Maybe then you could say Bryce Young will get better, or he will bounce back. I mean, I don't think he can be. I don't think he'll be that bad. I don't know. The Jets certainly weren't interested at all in finding out what Bryce Young could do. That's not their job. So, and it shouldn't be ours either, for that matter. But
it's a short amount of time here to think about this question. But who was the last rookie quarterback to in our memory? I mean, Roethlisberger comes to mind because he went to a freaking Super Bowl, I think, his rookie year, second year, I think. Second year, right? But who was the last rookie quarterback to come in and really just take the league by storm?
Well,
who am I missing?
Burrow.
Burrow
But he
definitely.
got hurt
Yeah, that was
too.
rookie
I mean,
year. I was trying to
he
think if
got
that was
hurt
his
in
first.
rookie
Yeah,
year.
Burrow for sure. I was thinking Mahomes or Burrow.
Actually, Mahomes, I think,
Herbert.
has been to the playoffs every year. I can't say Herbert's lit it up, because if you think about Herbert, he's been to one playoff game and he lost it miserably.
Yeah.
Wow. So I still have problems with people anointing Herbert as being this guy. He almost reminds me a little bit of like Dan Fouts did back in the day.
So
very good quarterback, but can he really take you there?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. This is a bit of a shift on Herbert for you. You were high on him.
Oh, I think the guy has great physical skills.
Yeah.
But do we anoint guys like on that, or do we anoint them on what they actually do on the field?
I agree with you. The honeymoon is over on that guy. He looked like the sky was the limit, but he seems to have plateaued right now.
You got to win eventually, right? You have to. It's got to be done with playoff wins, and I don't know. I think that it's hard to say how long the window lasts with some of these guys. Herbert right now is still a golden boy in terms of in the media, and the guy, he is a great talent. That's a good call though with the Fouts. It's funny we were talking about this because I did before we came on. I'm looking at the NFL Quarterback Council ranking the top 10 quarterbacks by trait. And it's pretty good breakdown to see. Like, it's one of them's like arm strength, then it's accuracy, and then it's touch and those kinds of things. And most of it's the same names over and over. But as you go down, you see it's funny to see who these rankings are. And these are the Orlovskis and these other assholes that are doing these, voting on these lists here. But so was that last week we did our list? Giant Mike missed that on that one. Yeah, we did the list of top players and all that stuff, top best fans and all that shit. But anyway, I was looking at this thing with the top quarterback, in terms of their skills, different skills, and Herbert, of course, is all over it. But I'm like, it's got to win something eventually here.
So do they have intangibles on there?
Yeah, they have something. It's called. It's a great one. Touch. Where is it? Mechanic. I thought there was one. I'm scrolling. Field vision is on there, and of course. Like decision making with the football. Who am I looking for? I'm looking for our boy Jay Fields out of Chicago, right? So I'm like, this schmuck better not be on any of these lists.
No, They'll add a category for him.
Yeah, exactly. So he finally appeared on compete level and toughness. And the little right appears. Who has the most desire to win? Toughness rolls into it. And our analysts look at each quarterback's bounce back ability and resilience here, along with how well they can take a hit. And Fields is number 9 on there. Get the fuck out of here.
So literally, one of our problems with Fields last year was Cardone and I noticed this when the Giants played the Bears. Dude goes to the bench, or maybe it wasn't the Giants game. Dude goes to the bench. Usually you get a rookie quarterback or a first-year quarterback. Immediately the offensive coordinator's with him, and they're like, they're doing the whole thing. Fields goes over there,
right? And just we did notice that.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
No coaches coming over.
Nope.
No receivers. Like,
is there a bigger?
Am I supposed to do that? No.
Is there a bigger BS line in football than the guy wants to compete to win?
Yeah.
Most of these guys want to compete to win. You just basically say that as a filler. Like, does Justin Fields really want to compete to win when he goes to the sidelines and put his hoodie on and sulks? I don't know.
Yeah.
If guys want to compete to win too hard, then they call them assholes. So, it's like, where do you find the pocket?
I got to make one more comment about this little, again, Fields is not, keep in mind, number 9th in the entire league out of 32 starting quarterbacks. So compete level also speaks to a quarterback's command of his offense, leadership qualities, and ability to deliver in the clutch. Simply put, you can never count out the players who made this top 10. Isn't the guy fucking 5-20 in the first 25 games?
Yeah.
But I can never count him out. He's 5-20. Yeah, he has 5 wins to his name in this league, but I can never count him out, guys.
Never
Can't count him out. Can't count him out. He had to find his way onto a list. God.
They had to. They had to get him on there. They would have created a category for him if they couldn't jam him in there.
The other cliche I want to throw out is the last guy in the facility or whatever, right? That like
oh yeah.
Everyone's got to be the last guy because everyone they talk about is the last guy. Like there must be people standing around waiting for that guy to leave because they're the last one.
That's awesome.
It's like the gym rat, right? The guy who he's the first one in. He's like, it's like Costanza, where when he locked his car keys in the car at Yankee Stadium, and like Steinbrenner is the first one to show up. He sees his car there, and then Wilhelm's the last one to leave, and he thinks between the two of them, they think he's working an 18-hour day.
That's what Joe Shane said about Daniel Jones, and I heard an interview with him this week, and he said he's the first guy in and last guy out. I'm like, really? Every single day, Daniel Jones is that guy?
Every day.
Bullshit.
The only person who really knows that for sure is the second guy in and the second to last guy out.
Right.
Exactly.
Bro, we know Jones is living there.
Yeah. If you're the third guy in, you don't know which one of the two guys there was the first guy in.
I question, especially if it's like the quarterback, the last guy out. Well, shit, is he still studying a fucking playbook? Like, how long? When is he going to get this thing? It's sort of like the last guy to hand in. I never wanted to be the last guy. Remember, like back in high school or even college, like you're taking an exam, your head's down, and all of a sudden you look up and you start that panic where everyone else is like they hand in their paper and leave, and all of a sudden you're looking around and you're like one of the last 3 or 4 guys left. You're like, holy shit! And then you just start filling in that little thing, or you just start writing any kind of bullshit. You don't want to be the last guy to hand in your paper or your exam. I always hated that. I started looking around like, oh my God, there's like no one left. Where'd everybody go?
They all know. Do the opposite where you're the first guy and no one's been up yet, so you just kind of doodle until 2 or 3 people go up, and then you go turn yours in.
So this week the Giants are playing the Panthers much like the Jets did last week. Like I said earlier, there was talk that Bryce Young will rebound. The Giants did sign an offensive lineman this week, Julian Davenport, former Texan, but bigger yet, he's a Bucknellian.
Hey, a Bison.
A
He's a Bison.
Look at you.
He's not particularly good though, but
yes.
Last game and going into this game, Hamilton, Phillips, Colin Johnson, Brightwell, and Neal are injured. Neal just came off the concussion protocol. Hamilton was waived injured. Trey Brown was waived injured as well. And we claimed off waivers from Denver a linebacker, Ray Wilburn. So we've made some moves. There are probably some more moves to be made after this next game. I think this next game is where you're going to see the starters go into the second quarter, and then we'll basically sit the last game. So that's the way it's been. So I mean, we talked about Justin Fields a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of love for Justin Fields because he was 3 for 3 with 2 touchdowns, and those 3 passes total like went less than 20 yards in the air. But there are people calling him MVP candidate, and I keep thinking to myself, cool, that's fine, but why is Justin Fields playing? Why is he starting a game and going multiple series into a game?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When is the last time that a guy who was deemed a potential MVP candidate played more than 7 snaps in the preseason? And that's
Doesn't
proof
happen.
that it's proof that no matter what the Bears say publicly, it's not the Bears who said we have an MVP candidate. It's the media. The Bears know he's not an MVP candidate because if they thought that, his ass would be on the bench, not getting hurt.
Exactly.
So that the whole idea that he's even out there, as Scott mentioned, just destroys the MVP candidate argument. And then this is how obsessed with this guy I am. I mean, if something happens to him, I better have an alibi. This guy, so I went back and on YouTube, I spent at least 15 minutes determining if his first touchdown was a lateral or not.
Well, I will say this,
Mike. I think they got it right.
His second touchdown, there definitely was illegal men downfield.
Yeah, there definitely was that. Yeah. But no, I think they got it right, but it was close. It was close to being a lateral. That's how.
But the amount of yardage from the ball that leaves his hand till it hits the receiver, and I'm not even counting past the line of scrimmage, just the yardage itself. 3 passes, it was less than 20 yards from the time that his receiver touched that ball. And people are going, oh my God, did you see Justin Fields 3 for 3, 144 yards and 2 touchdowns?
I don't.
Whatever it was, Emmanuel Acho, who loves to go off on certain quarterbacks, said that Justin Fields put in an MVP type effort. To me, it seemed like his DJ Moore put in a good effort. Yeah. Khalil Herbert put in a great effort.
Awesome play for Khalil Herbert. Yeah.
This has got to stop. It's funny when I first saw, I have to admit, guys, like I went to the box score. I'm looking at my phone here, and I went to and I did see Fields' numbers, and I'm like, no way could this be like, like a seam pass or something. Like what happened? Then when I saw the highlights, and then when I saw the write-up and the recap, Fields sharp, like as he throws 2 touchdown passes, and then when I saw the highlights, actually the pass to DJ Moore, maybe that's the one you're talking about, Giant Mike, with the it's actually a shitty pass. He throws it behind him.
Yeah.
And that's a dump off pass out into the flat. This
that's why I was going lateral crazy, because DJ Moore had to turn around to catch the ball.
Exactly.
I'm like, I don't know if
it was actually a horrible pass. And then the other thing, but that's the it says here, Fields throws touchdown passes to Moore and Herbert as the Bears beat the Titans. Justin Fields insisted long completions were coming. That's how the recap starts here. Justin Fields insisted long completions are coming. Like he threw a 40-yard fucking dart down the seam.
So Justin Fields basically said to the media, I told you these long touchdowns were coming after 2 screen passes?
Yeah. This is what's going on.
All right.
And these morons are writing this up like, okay, here, let's,
He got us.
Now, I will say one thing that was an area of concern watching the first game is, and this is a good thing to say. We said it last week too. The Giants' depth is not good, especially on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And if our linebackers go down or we have a defensive end go down, we might be in trouble. I thought Zimenez, for as much of a veteran as he is, he didn't do much at all. As a matter of fact, I like Tom and Fox a lot better on the edge.
Seems more active.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at the depth chart right here. When you, especially on that, the 3-4 defense here, like when you get to that second string edge or linebacker, it really feels like it thins out there. That's a good point, Scott. I mean, listen, nobody can afford injuries, right, in this league to your star players, obviously. But yeah, if Thibodeau goes down, or if any Lawrence or Williams or Ojolari, any of these guys go down for any long period of time, it's trouble, big trouble.
Yeah. The offensive line, I honestly, I couldn't be happier that we're talking about depth as a concern because, that's just not where we've been at all. Right now, the guys we consider depth were starting, 2 and 3 years ago. So, if something happens there, that's unfortunate. But like Cardone said, that's not that much different. No team can afford to lose a left tackle like Thomas. You just couldn't. You couldn't weather that kind of loss.
Well, Mike, like you said, like we have some issues there with depth, and that's fine. But I mean, think about if we go into a season and like Neal or Thomas are both injured, then you have to go to swing tackles. Hey, you just can't overcome that, and that's what you hope, that a team doesn't have cluster injuries.
Yeah.
So we have to keep away from the cluster injuries.
Yeah. Whenever someone gets hurt, outside of like Saquon or somebody like that, my initial reaction is like, okay, like every team has a guy that gets hurt and the backup comes in and he's fine. He's just fine. Everything's fine. And that just never seems to happen for us. Like the backup is a turnstile and you're like, oh my God, here we go.
Well, and I was thinking about this after watching the game. Cole Beasley had a pretty decent outing. So Cole Beasley's probably going to be on this team. Could Cole Beasley finally go up against the Cowboys and the Bills and show them up like ex-Giants will show up? Giants, so they play on.
Do we have our guy? Yeah.
Do we have a guy that could do that or not?
There were games, particularly when he was playing for Dallas, that I was terrified that they would keep throwing him the ball.
Terrified.
And for whatever reason, they just don't. I hope when he has the hot hand in one of our games, we don't go away from him. I mean, there were times we were playing Dallas when that guy could have had 23 catches.
Right.
And they just wouldn't. They just refused to throw him the ball.
Right, like a Jason Witten or
Yeah.
And Mike, you missed the pod last week, but I mean, even then we talked about Colin Johnson. So Colin Johnson, hell of a preseason last year. Unfortunately, got injured, was out for the year. He's probably not going to make the roster this year. That's how deep our wide receiver core went from one year to the next.
Cardone's guy, right?
Well, Johnson from sales, right? I mean, it's Scott, you just mentioned it. It's funny. Cluster injuries. I love that. Well, I mean, you don't have to go any, like, how about at wide receiver last year? I mean, we had a wide receiver go down. Not even every game, like every half of every game, it seemed like.
Yeah. I mean, like the Ravens with running backs last year.
We were pulling like Bob Sacamano out of the stands to play receiver.
Sills the fifth is still in there though.
Yeah, Sills the vaccinated is still there. Yeah.
So Novak, I don't know if you caught up with Hard Knocks, but we'll talk about Hard Knocks in just a second. But Jets coach Tony Uden, he was carted off after a fight this today with the Bucks. So I guess things have been really heated between the Jets and the Bucks this week, and things got a little bit out of control today.
Apparently. Yeah, I saw the clip, and it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal, but apparently he got carted off. Look, tempers flare up in the summer, and that's the way it's going to be. It was that way with the Panthers last week. Not surprised. These things are going to happen. With the Jets right now, the big talk is the offensive line, and you guys were talking about the offensive line, so I want to get Mike's take on this because Mike is to the offensive line like Scott is to officiating and Cardone is to Seinfeld.
Yeah.
So the Jets' one issue, they have a lot of issues, but the one issue that everyone's focused on is the offensive line, right? And we talked about it. I texted you guys this week about this. I feel like every team has an offensive line issue.
Yes.
Like there is a problem with the offensive line talent in the NFL in general. So I want to say that 32 of 32 teams have an offensive line issue. Okay, so let's just take that as context. Every Jet fan and every media person for the Jets are saying, move. So let me step back. The core of the Jets are Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, and I would throw in Elijah Vera Tucker, a guard that is Quentin Nelson type talent.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about, let's just move him to tackle. First of all, it's not that easy.
No,
it is not like you just
tackle.
No, you can't just take a guard where he wants to be, move him to tackle, and have him be the same level of talent. And even if you did do that, hello, you're weakening your guard position, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's not just such an easy switch. So Mike, I know you talk about offensive line, and I can't speak as well as you can about it. That's not an easy switch.
No, guard to tackle. I mean, swapping out guard to center and swapping from left to right tackle or left to right guard is a slight adjustment. But guard and tackle, those are two completely different things. And I actually do think that it's more difficult to go from tackle to guard. Guard, tackle's more about brute strength,
Totally.
and all offensive linemen have brute strength. Guard is a technical position with pulling and going up to the next level and knowing where to double team. You got players on both sides of you, knowing where to help, knowing where to go. So that is actually more difficult, I think, than going guard out to tackle. But I wouldn't be happy to hear that my team was doing that with a really good player. Now, Scott, we had a player, was it Parrott, who could go inside too? I mean, he wasn't particularly good at either. I might be thinking of the wrong guy.
Yeah, because I think Parrott's been mainly at tackle.
He's been
mostly tackle.
I know Justin Pugh though used to be able to go between guard and tackle and things like that. But
yeah, if you can do that well, that's an amazing skill. I mean, that's really pretty good. But guard and tackle are like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, and it's like the only one coming to my head is like, if you compare them to NASCAR, playing tackle is a super speedway position and playing guard is a road course. They're just so different in what you're doing.
I feel like the average fan thinks a guard is a throwaway position, right? Anyone can play guard. If you're just a big body, you can get in there and you can handle the guard position. I look at our week 1, we've got the Bills. I'm worried about Ed Oliver. I'm not worried about one of their defensive ends. And Vera Tucker is going to be lined up against Oliver. I'd rather have him at his natural position where he is one of the best in the game. The drop-off between Vera Tucker and our next guard is significant. Yeah. I don't think he's going to be any better than Dwayne Brown or Mekhi Becton as a tackle.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great you're all over that, Scott. And I think there's two things there. I don't think it's just the average fan who devalues guards. I think NFL teams are starting to devalue guards. Right. I mean, you look at the way the Giants built tackle, center. Yeah. We still have a bit of a guard problem, but if you got two good tackles and a pretty good center, you can kind of cover. Yeah. You can find some guys to plug in. So I think that the NFL teams have devalued guard a little bit. I go back because I'm a Giants fan to Chris Snee. And I compared Schmitz to Chris Snee as a guy. We draft him, you put him at guard, and you forget he's there until he retires. He just is in there doing his job every week, and that is such as the life of the guard, I think, sometimes. And you mentioned also very astutely, I think, from watching preseason games, that every play is a jailbreak.
Yep.
And I think more so than anything else, that is a function of not just offensive line devaluing, but guard devaluing.
Well, guys, go back to Quentin Nelson when he was drafted by the Colts. It was the same draft the Giants took Barkley. And there was a discussion about, the Giants can't take a running back at 2. It's not a good value. But there was the same discussion. You can't take a guard at 2. That's a terrible value as well. Yeah. But, you have a strong guard that can stay there for 10 plus years. I mean, you have a guy who's a cornerstone of your team. I think I said this on the chat, and I'll reiterate this when it comes to O-line play. I think part of the problem is you're looking at colleges now, especially those that are like in the lower levels that can't compete with the top guys. They're going to spread offenses. Yeah. So when you have a spread offense, you can't tell if your guard, tackle, center are doing well because they're really not holding up for very long. You could get the ball out within a microsecond.
Mhm.
You know, it's really the only time you're seeing guys you can evaluate in the true sense that we think of it are the Alabamas of the world, the Georgias, those that are playing the pro sets. Everyone else is doing hybrid offenses.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Clap.
Yeah,
good call, Scott. You're 100%. You're spot on.
That's a great call. Yeah, it's interesting we're talking about this because same thing on draft day, right? The NFL, it's left tackle, quarterback's blind side, right? It's his backside and all that. But it's true. We've been watching, as Giant fans, we've been watching a horrific interior line, offensive line, where does they always talk about the A gap, right? So the pressure, you just said it, Mike, like a jailbreak. So when the pressure comes straight up the gut there, that's the pocket. Like with the interior line, a tackle can at least force the guy up the field where a quarterback can still step up and deliver a pass still in that pocket. If the interior line is just getting blown up all the time, well, you don't have a passing game or a running game, obviously, because they're also stopping the run in the middle of the line as well. So it's true. Like we think about guards. Novak, you just said it. Like this throwaway position. It's sort of like the kid in right field in Little League. Like let's put our worst player out there. That's not really an important position. No, man, the guard. Like those are your guards. Like what does the word guard mean? It's like it's protection, it's security, it's net. That's what those guys do, man.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
And
I feel like we've really stumbled onto something here. Scott's point is awesome. There's not a lot of teams lining up in college and running a 32 trap these days.
It's true.
It's just not there. And Cardone, you were all over that too. And I think the one thing is you show me a pocket passer who has MVP level numbers in this league. I don't even need to look. I guarantee you there's a good center and a good guard on that team.
Yeah.
100%.
Now, the other thing that devalues them is the Patrick Mahomes and the Josh Allens. I don't need a guard because when I get a gap pressure, my quarterback can roll out and kill you. So
yeah,
we're losing one of my favorite all-time positions, the billiard, the guard, my old guys back there.
Well, and I think the Giants are struggling with that right now too. So I think Schmitz played very well his first game as a pro. He picked up stunts. He as a center he did well, but then you have to look at your guards. You have Bredesen, you have Glowinski who didn't play. You have Azudu, and I think those guys are going to be your rotation of three as the season starts, and you just hope that they can be adequate in that role and get by on it, And I think Bredesen actually is coming along, but I don't think by any means are those guys the guys we think of as there's our Chris Snee, there's our Sean O'Hara, that's our guy.
Well, I saw two different plays where Schmitz was out leading blocking out in the flat from the center position, and I was salivating. I'm like, this guy, look at this guy out there.
Yeah. Novak,
nothing better than Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
No, I'm going to change the subject. So if you want to get one more thing.
No, it's okay. No, that's fine.
So Novak, did you get to watch Hard Knocks this week?
I did. It was much better than week one. I will say that.
Any comment on the team building goldfish killing exercise?
Whatever. Like that's the type of shit that I just don't. I'm not thrilled that the world gets to see. Like every team does it. It just makes the Jets look foolish when they have like a mentalist or whatever he is there. And McCole Hardman's up there predicting the Jets winning the Super Bowl 31-21. Like I don't want that. Like it's unnecessary. That's the shit I don't like about Hard Knocks. I don't know, but I did think Hard Knocks, the second episode was much better. The first one was incredibly boring. And I finally got to see what I liked out of Robert Saleh. He actually felt like he was on the players a little bit versus being like their best bud, which he seems to be. I can do away with his like corny little cliches and shit he talks about with like, crows eating at the necks of the eagles and all this crap that he talks about. Like that stuff bothers me a little bit. Like I'm worried that little cliche stuff is going to wear thin if they start losing. But I did like him a little bit better. He's my only other concern right now, other than the offensive line. He worries me with his corniness a little bit.
Well, you came in a little bit late on the pod when we were talking earlier, and to me, Saleh has they. There are some questions that are based on the Hard Knocks because he comes across as a guy who, has a great deal of confidence for the record that he's actually put up, and we liken him a little bit to the way Joe Judge was, and
a little bit. Yes.
There's a lot of talk there, but eventually you got to back that up, and if you don't back that up in this league, you're just not going to survive.
Well, I was actually going to ask you guys about that. Like, Daboll obviously is a great coach, right? I think you guys are on the right track there. All the props to you all. But this is just small but. If you start losing, that sort of like tough mentality with today's players can wear thin.
Yep.
I saw it with Rex Ryan. Now Rex Ryan's a cornball with his the feet and the whole thing. I get that. But like his tough guy mentality thing, when you start losing, that doesn't go over well. What do you think about that?
I think, I'll answer this first and I'll let the other guys chime in. But I think with Daboll, it's a little bit different. Daboll has that every guy sort of approach to things. He's very calm and collected in the press conferences.
Yeah.
So for him, he's not making these grandiose predictions. He's not saying we're going to come out here and punch you in the face. He's not saying the things that Rex Ryan perhaps was saying, or even, past coaches that have gotten themselves in trouble. I think an act like that, or a guy like that, I should say, fares much better when the losing happens because he can at least lean back on the fact that, look, I'm not being a dick. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm just sort of coaching my team. And that's the way I look at it from Daboll. What I've been impressed with Daboll is when Daboll's in front of the press, he wasn't condescending like Judge was. He wasn't like quiet like Shermer was. He just answers their questions, and he does it a little bit like Belichick does. I mean, he answers their questions. He's not particularly effusive or not. He just gives them an answer and says, this is what it is, and let's move on. And I think a guy like that can handle losing at least for a little bit longer than a guy who is so in your face. And like a Jim Harbaugh does not last long when losing happens in the NFL because he's so arrogant on the front side.
Yeah.
It depends. If the Giants get off to, it's a good question, Novak, to get, it has me thinking, I don't know. He has 1 year under his belt. It was a successful year. So when things are going well, there's not a lot of friction and there's not a lot of questions being thrown around, So if the Giants get off to a, let's say a very poor start and, and we all have seen this with, it doesn't matter what team it is, like there's dissension in the locker room and there's guys pointing fingers and all that shit starts to happen. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. It's hard to predict how maybe Daboll would change his tactics, or maybe he would change his motivation style or coaching to kind of keep the guys rallied and kind of. So we'll have to see. I don't know. It's hard to answer right now until we see a tough stretch, a really bad stretch. I mean, Giants, they started 6-1 last year and then kind of hit a rough patch where they weren't sure they were going to make the playoffs last year, and they kind of came through that as a team. So, but if they get off to a real bad start this year, I think expectations are higher. It's going to be interesting to see. I think it has to kind of just play out before I would be able to say, well, I don't know, the guys, because Coughlin, right? I mean, Coughlin was a disciplinarian, right? That was more almost like school teacher kind of bullshit where that's not, we're not that far removed from that, but that shit certainly wouldn't work in today's, a prima donna.
You'd have to win immediately. You'd have to win immediately.
Correct. So, so Daboll, you can't, it's not apples to apples there with a Coughlin, but I don't know if, we'll how would he, keep everybody's morale up and keep all that stuff going? We'll have to see what happens. Hopefully, we don't have to answer that question. Obviously, shit.
Well,
I don't want to think about. I don't want to think about the
point,
Giants getting off to a bad start or having a rut, obviously. But I don't know. Daboll, at least on the surface, seems to be a guy that would keep things, at a high level, at least in the, in the locker room and the sideline presence and stuff. We'll see.
Yeah.
Now, Cardone, it was a good point you made, though, because, I mean, if you look at Daboll last year, we did have a stretch there where it looked like we could fall out of the playoff race. And he was very even keeled even through that. And he said, look, we're taking it week by week. We're taking it game by game. He never disparaged the opponent, never called us, world beaters or anything like that. He just maintained a very workman-like attitude on everything.
Yeah, what I liked, I didn't see any panic there from certainly from Daboll, right? You don't know what it's like behind closed doors, but it seemed like the team respond. They won that big game late in the season against Washington and stuff. So they responded well late in the season. So I don't know. I think it seems like he's got the right kind of personality temperament as a head coach in this league, because I can't imagine what it's like dealing with personalities and stuff like that. Anybody can be a coach as far as the X's and O's and draw up plays and shit like that. But how do these fucking guys deal with personalities? And I'm talking about all professional sports. And in fact, if we do pet
100%.
peeves, one of my pet peeves is about just the professional athlete today, and just the motivation level and the laziness from some of these guys. It's
we always do pet peeves. What are you talking about?
I know
if we do pet
I know.
peeves. Yeah, that's a really, I mean, this is a very interesting conversation. I was going to go all over Coughlin, but Cardone said it all real well right there. But, I don't know much about Saleh, but, Scott, you just said he's sort of a player buddy player. And it looks like maybe he's trying to turn up the seriousness a little bit. Or, I think in today's NFL that plays better than the opposite of that, because your players, the loyalty's not there like it used to be. If you're not winning, your players will turn on you now.
100%.
And they're more likely to turn on you if you are busting their ass every day and then losing on Sunday. That just there's no, they've seen coaches get fired. They know how short fuses are. They know that if this guy's not doing it, I got no loyalty to this guy and I don't want to play for him. And if he gets fired, then maybe someone who can win will be in here. So I think it's hard. I think a guy like Daboll and I think like Saleh probably have a better chance to stick around through a losing period than a lot of coaches do. The ideal coach to be in this league right now is Andy Reid. Is just a guy who's been there and done it, and he doesn't put a lot of pressure on people. He's pretty laid back, and players trust him because of what he's done in the past. He can do anything he wants. He could come out with any style he wants. But even because you can't do it with just one of those things, because when Parcells came back and tried to coach that way with the Jets, and it worked for the Jets more so than like the Cowboys, and but he doesn't last long. He's got a short shelf life.
Agreed.
Yeah. Good talk.
That's good stuff. We're crushing it right now. Should we just stop? I mean, I don't know. It's one of our best episodes ever.
Yeah, we're really analytical tonight. I'm not sure if I like it.
Breaking this shit down.
But that is really good talking about the coaches and the different demeanors you see with the coaches, because it does flip based on the generation, I think, of the player. It also flips on how well the coach is doing at the time. I mean, a guy like Mike Tomlin, very even-keeled guy, great teacher, great motivator. And, he's stayed steady for a long time. What happens if he starts losing? I don't know if we'll know. I mean, he hasn't really started losing. The guy a guy like I wonder about, and this is the coach I kind of want, is McDermott from the Bills. No one really knows what he is like. I mean, is he fiery? Is he not? I don't really care. I don't want to see my coach being the center of attention. And I think that's part of it, is when your coach is the center of attention, that's when you start losing, then you have to get rid of the guy.
Let's just hope that happens to Sirianni, because that mother.
He's trying. He's trying.
Sirianni to me is so fake, and it's one of those things where it's almost like he was being propped up by his team. Watch me be completely wrong, and the Eagles end up going on and doing great things, but Sirianni bugs the shit out of me. Just his whole demeanor during that Giants playoff game. You're a coach on a playoff team that's winning by a huge amount, and you're mugging it up for the cameras. Name another coach in NFL history that has ever done that.
None.
I mean, don't you remember Vince Lombardi dancing up and down the sidelines and whooping it up with players? Classic footage there.
Chuck Knoll or, yeah.
Sirianni he has a punchable face. I mean, he just does.
Sirianni is a 2-season dip away from being fired. That's
agreed.
That's where he is. He's just that kind. He will take the fall if the Eagles falter. We just got to cross our fingers that the Eagles falter.
And I think that's sort of what we've been talking about here. Is that Sirianni's a type of coach. You're great when you're winning. When you're not winning, you're going to be out.
Yeah.
And some other coaches can weather that because they're not jackets. Look at John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh has been in Baltimore forever. The guy didn't win last year, but the guy competes. He's not. Does anyone say John Harbaugh is on the hot seat? No. And it should be. He should not be.
Coaches can change. We saw Coughlin change. Now, I don't think these days he would even be given the chance to change. He'd have been gone long before that happened. But, I think of a guy like Doug Peterson, who was a bit of a cocksucker in Philly. And,
a big one.
He gets down in Jacksonville. He seems kind of like a different guy. And maybe that's just because he's not coaching the Eagles. And I just by spite hate the coach of the Eagles. But he seems a little bit more chill. He seems to be more of a player's coach now than he was. I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading everything, but I just get a different feel off that guy now than I did before.
Yeah.
I think we all can agree. We all hate all things Philadelphia. That's the one thing we all have in
still
common.
Go suck a big one for tanking that game to knock the Giants out of the playoffs. But
that's right.
So I'll start. We got 4 people here tonight, which is odd because no one's working tonight. So I'll start with Novak. Any pet peeves this week?
Yeah. So my pet peeve. So there's very few things I love more than the NFL. Very few things. One thing might be, especially in recent years, is college football. And my pet peeve is this realignment bullshit that they're going through right now.
Oh.
That's a good call. Great call, actually.
Stanford and Cal in the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. We're going to have Miami against Cal. What are we doing here? Rutgers playing UCLA in the Big Ten. This just enough with the conferences, enough with this realignment. We're losing all of these great rivalries and the great things that were the Pac-10, the Big 12, the Big 10, ACC. All of it is just, and it's a trickle down now to the smaller conferences. I hate what is going on with this. Just do away with the conferences altogether. Take all these teams, play the best games you can play, put it on TV. Let us be excited about it. This realignment, I am so over it and annoyed by what's happening here.
That's a great rant. Just think about this.
Yeah.
USC and UCLA are going to be in a conference that they ended up playing all the time in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How stupid is that?
Yeah. What are they doing with the Rose Bowl? I mean, that's such a good rant.
Granddaddy of them all.
I mean, the Big Ten has 18 teams.
Come on.
They're the Big Ten.
Right.
Not even
the Big 18.
Yeah.
The Pac-10, there's nobody left.
I remember I was pissed when they added the 11th team. I was like, this is the stupidest thing.
I know.
And yeah. It's so dumb.
No, it's a great call. We haven't talked about it on our show here yet because it's it's kind of it's just been taking place, right? More and more realignment and stuff like that. But yeah, Novak, you get a great point. Because I've gotten to college football a lot more in the last few years, and same thing. I can't keep track. I don't know who's in what conference anymore. That's ridiculous? Like those were staple things. You know what I mean? Like that was that you could just count on year in and year out. And now you're right, man. It's all about money, and it's all about that's what's driving everything now. And as a bunch of old school guys like we are, it's just tough to take, man. It's tough to digest all this shit.
Yeah, this is.
There's not much of a better thing than a Saturday filled with college game day. You go into all these rivalry games. I can watch Minnesota and Northwestern and watch the whole thing before I can watch Jacksonville and Tennessee. Like it's just more entertaining. The game is better. And now they're just ruining it with these ridiculous conference alignments. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's
Great call.
People called me a bit of an alarmist like 20 years ago. I remember however many years ago it was now when they broke up the Big East, mostly for basketball. But I said, I just don't like where this is headed. I don't know. And everyone, when I moved here, people were like, you're too like worried about the Big East. Nobody outside of the Northeast cares. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't like you guys don't, we had Georgetown and Syracuse. You had Duke and North Carolina, a much more national importance game. But I hated Syracuse and Georgetown, but I would not miss that game for anything.
Anything.
And when they just were able to just kind of tear that whole thing apart and move Syracuse and, I still, this is a whole different conversation, but the Big East is still there and it's still pretty good in basketball. But yeah, it's a shame. And this is the natural progression of what started with that kind of thing and moving Oklahoma to wherever they got moved to and all that nonsense. And the best case scenario for this is what Scott just said, the complete disillusion of conferences.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you made a good call on the Big East. I mean, the Big East was the first domino that started all this, and it was basketball related. But if you look at the Big East, I mean, if anyone gets to watch the 30 for 30 Requiem of the Big East, it's
good.
one of the best.
Oh, yeah.
30
It
for
is the
30s
best
ever.
by far.
Yeah.
Might not match the two Bills, but other than that, it's up there. It is one of the best.
Imagine guys like flip it for a second, like with the NFL. And I know the NFL has they've done some realignment in our lifetimes, or since 2002, I think was when they made the last major one, was when the Texans came in the league. That's when they went to the 8-4 team divisions, But think about, all right, like any of our teams. Imagine not being in the same division as like the Eagles or the Redskins, or the Jets. You're all of a sudden they do all this kind of a realignment, and now all of a sudden you're not in the same division as the Bills or the Dolphins or the Patriots. It's just imagine that. It just it doesn't even make sense, and that's kind of what they're doing.
Well, it's weird going back and look at old stats or watching old games, and it comes up and it's like the Giants versus Phoenix next week.
Yeah. The Phoenix Cardinals. Yeah. But the NFL got it right though. That was the whole reason why they made sure like they weren't moving Dallas anywhere.
Yeah.
The Dallas Cowboys were not going anywhere other than the NFC, staying in the NFC East. And but with the realignment in the NFL, they got it right all those years ago. So
they did. But when they did that, they did get it right. And no one wanted to see the NFC East break up, but it never really felt like the Cardinals belonged there anyway. So
they didn't.
Kind of like, it's no big deal.
Yeah. I mean, especially when they went to Phoenix. Yeah. St. Louis, fine.
Washington and the Giants and Philly makes sense. I wouldn't have hated seeing Dallas get out of there. That wouldn't have broke my heart.
True. But just wouldn't be right.
Cardone, pet peeves this week?
Yeah, I kind of just alluded to mine a little bit earlier about at this time of year, right? We're not obviously into the regular season yet, so I'm trying to watch baseball for God's sakes, because there's not a lot of sports on right now. I like watching golf and stuff. By the way, I will make a golf. Just a quick comment about the golf. Did anybody watch the FedEx Championship on Sunday? What in the hell was going on inside of Lucas Glover's pants / underwear? I have never seen a set of like a swamp ass display more egregious than what Glover had going on. I mean, I don't care what the heat index was, what the humidity was, what the wet bulb temperature was. That was horrific.
I think that made every social media view and everything else. So Lucas Glover, by the way, ended up winning the tournament.
The guy made some crazy putts on 13 and 14. Like, I thought the guy was like, all right, the guy's finally going to crack under the pressure. Either that or he's just going to like the sweat. He can't even feel his club anymore. I don't know. The guy plays with no gloves. The guy's got his hands in. Did you see that? In between holes, he's got his hands in the ice on the buckets there. But this guy's a mess, Glover. And somehow he ended up winning. But I've never seen that, especially today with the dry wicking fabric that we have out there with the This isn't the old days of Arnold Palmer days of the heavy cotton and the baggy pants and the heavy fabric. Like, this is I couldn't figure out what the hell I was watching. Finally, I'm like, I was hoping Jim Nantz or somebody would make a comment like, yeah, like
hello, friends. He's sweating
hello.
through his ass.
I've never seen anything like it. But it wasn't just like, I mean, yeah, I could see the crack and the thing in the back, the whole thing. But it was a full-fledged, down the front, running down the inner thighs, the whole crotch area. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Like, that was absurd.
What was the airplane scene, Cardone, with the
Ted
he's
Stryker
cracking up. The sweat is just shooting.
Oh yeah,
out
Ted Stryker when he's trying to land. He's trying to. And Kramer's trying to work him in. In Chicago there. Yeah, Stryker. And you got Dr. Rumack coming in. Just want to tell you, wish you both good luck. We're all counting on you. And Stryker's wiping the sweat off his brow. That's what it looked like. He had Ted Stryker syndrome in his pants.
It reminded me of that. Like he was completely melting down. And I love how you say somehow he won the tournament. Like,
and somehow, yeah. But this guy's out there with no gloves either.
You were just waiting for what was the guy's name? John Veldeveld.
Yeah.
Vandeveld, yeah.
Started shooting, just hitting the ball straight into the creek. Just
maybe Lucas Glover's wife was giving him a dirty look because she's the one that he got. She got called for like domestic abuse on him like a few years ago.
It's funny though. Like I kept thinking that I was trying to, as I'm watching the telecast, I'm watching the broadcast. I'm trying to see, well, what pants is he wearing? Is it Under Armour, Nike, Adidas? Whoever the marketing personnel is for the company, like they're like shit looking at like Glover. When you do something, our sales are dropping by the minute here with
melting down.
Yeah. Who's going to go out and buy a pair? Let's say it was Adidas or something. Who's going to go out and be like, shit, I ain't getting those. Did you see Glover on Sunday? I'm not walking around a golf course. You can't. Heat index is over 100. Shit. Golf game is bad enough. Walking around with my underpants, just awesome. Saturated. That didn't make sense, man.
We got so derailed here. What was your pet peeve? Actually,
that wasn't even my pet peeve. My pet peeve was actually a baseball one that I me. I have an analogy for football, but I'm watching highlights the other day. I'll make this quick. I was watching highlights on ESPN or Sports Center, whatever, and I think it was the Seattle Mariners, the right fielder guy. So base is empty. Guy hits a rope line drive to right field where the right fielder comes over. He's moving to his right. He's a left-hander, so he's got the glove on his right hand. He loses the ball in the lights. So the ball, you ever seen that guy where all of a sudden the guy freezes and the ball just goes right between like his head and the glove and his glove. Totally whiffs on the line drive. So now the ball rolls to the wall, of course. So instead of the guy getting up and running to go get the fucking ball, he's just there on one knee just watching it. Meanwhile, there's no where's the center fielder now is screaming over. Now the camera goes to the guy running the bases. He's rounding second, going around third. But my pet peeve is just the right fielder. Oh, because you're embarrassed and because you're a pro, you can't run after the ball because that could happen to anybody. You lost the ball in the lights. I'm so sick and tired of these guys not busting it, whether they're busting down the line on a whether it and you can use football as well. My football analogy with that'd be, so by the way, the guy came around and scored I guess, I don't know if it was a home run with the inside the park home run because they didn't call it an error or whatever, but there comes the center. The guy's just sitting there on one knee as the ball's rolling go get the ball. The center fielder comes over, I don't know, all the way over, finally grabs the ball, but it was too late. The guy came around to score. And I was like, what? That'd be the same thing on an NFL field where a punt returner is back there all the way by himself, muffs the punt. We love the word muff, right? He muffs the punt and then just sits there on one knee as the ball's like rolling behind him. I'm like, oh, fuck it. Someone will come over and recover the fumble. I'm embarrassed now. I muffed the punt. I'm just gonna sit here on one knee and someone will get it, right? The center fielder or someone's gonna get the ball. It's the same thing.
The famous Cam Newton Super Bowl business decision. Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Only a Super Bowl championship was riding on that. But
these guys do not have like the Justin Fields level of heart and desire for the game. That's the problem.
I love how we could tie Fields into anything. But it just pissed me off seeing this guy sitting there on his knee. It wasn't like he was he didn't dive for the ball and was hurt. I can see if the guy tore a rotator. The guy just lost the ball in the lights and now is just watching it roll to the wall. Get up and go get the ball.
We need more.
God,
who was the catcher for the White Sox who read the riot act to Dion for not running out a fly ball? Remember that?
Fisk?
Was it? I think it was Fisk.
Was it Carlton Fisk?
Maybe.
Or was it the Y? What's the guy's name started with a Y?
Oh, Yeager? Wait.
No.
Steve Yeager?
Where am I? Not Yeager.
From the Dodgers?
I'm going back 100 years.
Yeah, I don't remember. That reminds me of that. Remember Dion not running out a fly ball, and the catcher gets up in his face. You respect the game. You respect the game.
Well, that's another thing that always bugged me. Whenever I struck out in high school or college, I would, as soon as the ball hit the dirt, I would run to first.
Mm-hmm.
You see guys now, they strike out, they just start walking back to the dugout. The ball could be back to the back. They don't give a shit. They're just walking back to the dugout.
Nah, the embarrassment, Scott, especially like at the major league level, it's always the embarrassment. Like it's of just running, busting it down the line or whatever. That's a great one. Like too, you see balls are rolling around after a drop third strike. Fuck it.
Let them tag me. It's fine. I didn't hit a home run, which was all I really wanted to do on that at bat. I'm not going to steal a cheap single and help my team win. Fuck it.
And meanwhile, as I'm watching that, I then flip over and watch, because the Little League World Series, which I love that event, right? We've talked about that before on our show. And those kids, you see the hustle and you see just the determination and the coaching, and it's all about the sportsmanship and this and that. And it's like, what happens somewhere when you get to with each level as you go, as you go up in your career? Why all of a sudden at the professional level are you just allowed to just not do anything? Fuck it.
I know Novak hates us talking about officiating. I have a gripe here. First, it's going to be in a Little League, and that's going to go to NFL. But Little League now, how many challenges do we have to sit there and watch on the Little League World Series?
Mm-hmm.
It's like challenge. All right, takes 5 minutes, and then challenge next play. It's like, what is going on here? And by the way, with the NFL, my point with the NFL, and I'll make this brief. Define what roughing the passer is. Tell us exactly what roughing the passer is, so there's no gray area. So when a guy like the Giants has a sack and a flag comes in and he's celebrating and he's doing his dance, it's not a flag because he had a illegal hit to the quarterback that no one could figure out what happened. It's not just the Giants; it's everything in the NFL. Tell us what is wrong. Can you? How do you put too much weight on the quarterback? What is the requirements for roughing the passer? That's all I want to know. Just make it crystal clear.
Yeah.
Let me just say this. It depends on who the quarterback is.
Well, it does.
Right? Because if it's Mahomes or my guy, the Dick, it's going to be, you look at him the wrong way. If it's going to be anybody else, it's different. Sadly.
True. No, it's true.
They need to. That has the roughing the passer has leaked into Madden. Do you know that? I
didn't
play. Yeah,
really?
You're playing Madden, and about every third hit on the quarterback is roughing the passer. It's.
Are you serious, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Really? Yeah. It's in a video game now.
Yeah, it's in a video game. Yep. It's that used to be my funnest thing about playing Madden was, I'd be rushing the passer and just never stop. I didn't care about what was happening downfield.
Is that going to leak into fantasy football drafts now? You make fun of a guy too much, he's going to get, roughing calls.
Roughing,
where are we going with this?
Roughing will be a -1 for fantasy. -2 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get your defense gets -5 for roughing the passer.
You're being really mean to the guy who drafted a kicker in the 5th round. Come on.
That's a whole different. Yeah, you lose a draft pick.
Mike, pet peeves?
Yeah, I kind of got one. I was going to go full Justin Fields, but I think we covered Justin tonight. But there's just watching the whole season being back in play and actually watching a game that he played in has, re-invoked a whole bunch of emotion in me. And but we covered it all tonight. We got it all. The the going crazy over the balls that aren't in the air very long, but what did stem from that into this pet peeve is the way stats are manipulated in football. I think maybe more so than any other game, and we've talked before about how there's this huge desire to turn football into a stat game.
Oh yeah.
There's this huge desire to make football analytical, and to you've always seen people like running computer simulations trying to figure out who's going to win, and that kind of stuff works over baseball with a 16-game season. You can get pretty close when things are more predictable, but football's not like that at all. And it drew me to this category of the hidden stats and the things you don't know about. And I thought of several different examples of it. And one of them, it was one of my favorite conversations, one of my favorite interviews, because the guy interviewing Michael Strahan looked like he had no idea what Michael Strahan was talking about. And I don't think the average fan does. But they were talking about the sack, and they were kind of laughing about the Favre laying down sack. And Strahan went into this. He said, believe it or not, this is coming from me, sacks is one of the most overrated stats in football.
Yeah.
And he said, he was talking about how, listen, I'm not going to the Hall of Fame because I turned a running back up into a hole and limited his gain to 1 yard, 1 yard or 2 yards without even touching him. But that was the biggest thing I did for the New York Giants every day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so, the announcer, the guy interviewing him just like jaw on the floor and listen to Michael Strahan going, do you know, like, I can get a sack and make it 3rd and 18, or I could just pressure the guy into throwing the ball too early and he throws an interception, and now my team has the ball. That's a case where, the better outcome for them would have been a sack. I don't think these are things that fans understand. Yeah. That pressures can be more valuable than actual sacks. And to Strahan's point on sacks, he said almost no sack is just you beating the guy in front of you and getting to the quarterback and making the sack. So many things out of your control have to go your way.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback either has to not see you or see you and decide not to throw it away. More times than not, when you get a sack, someone's missed a block. Is the way most of them come out of. But the sack is the sexy stat, so that's what people look at, and it can be a very deceiving stat. A lot of times sacks result from guys not doing what they're supposed to do on that play. That a lot of times that happens. There's a famous LT story about that, but we can go about that some other time. But it was Justin Fields who made me think of that, because you can immediately, like Cardone said, happen to him. You look at the box score and you're like, oh shit, this guy had a pretty decent game. No, he didn't. ESPN has done this to us where we're stat whores, and we've all talked about before in person and on this show, where you watch an ESPN highlight reel and you're like, holy shit, the Bears just kicked the shit out of the Lions today. And then at the end they threw it, and the Lions won that 36-20. Yeah, right. Like, what? So I don't like having, we've all mentioned this before as well, is sometimes it's just really annoying having a conversation with a fan who's not as into this as we are, because they talk about things on a very surface level. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody has to be obsessed with the NFL for me to get along with them or like them. But what I don't like about that, and this is where I end it, is if that guy is the same guy who comes to work on Monday and says, "What happened to your Giants?" That's a guy.
Everyone hates
the guy
that guy.
asking for a punch in the face.
And like it's funny, you talked about that with the fans, but think about with the players. There's a certain standard of players that they believe guys are better than they're perceived in the media or with the fans, and they don't get a fair shake with the Hall of Fame. I think a guy like Leonard Marshall. Leonard Marshall set the edge. Leonard Marshall rushed the quarterback. But Leonard Marshall is on the outside looking in because it was before it was all the glamour of, here, we're a Super Bowl winner, we're doing this, we're gonna elevate guys that don't really belong, because they made a Super Bowl. I feel bad for Leonard Marshall because Leonard Marshall did those things you were talking about. He clogged those running lanes. He made those defensive end, bat downs where he would grab the ball and then intercept it.
Yeah.
Things like that you just don't see in today's game.
No, and that's another great example of a hidden stat. So I know this because my high school football team played this way. And if you look in the NFL, any team that has one or two just awesome linebackers, I almost guarantee that the job of the defensive line on that team is not to go for glory, tie up people so the linebackers can run.
Yep.
And you're not going to the Hall of Fame if you're on that team. I think the exception is, I think probably a couple of the Baltimore defensive linemen went, but their job was completely to let Ray Lewis run. That was, that was, Siragusa and those guys, maybe worked in an era where they got more love than the guys like you're talking about back in the day, Scott, who just spent an entire NFL career in the trenches, killing their body so that other people could collect the accolades.
Yeah.
A great one.
That's a good one, Mike.
Very good, man.
So my pet peeve, it's somewhat sports oriented. It's really more life oriented. It's this reliance we have anymore on a backstory. We can't just let someone have whatever it is and let it be. I mean, you talk about, this is evident right now with the thing that's going on with Michael Orr and The Blind Side. There's a backstory there. We have to look at him as being the guy that was adopted and this, whatever happened there happened. But it isn't just there. Think about the Olympics. How many times at the Olympics do they have a person? Oh, well, they came from a family whose father was paralyzed at age 12 and they had to overcome that, or America's Got Talent. The best singer isn't the best singer. It's the singer who has the dad dying from cancer or something like that. So everyone has to have a backstory. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why sports can't stand on its own as a competition. We don't need to have that. That's one of the great things about sports that I look at. We don't need to have a backstory. We don't need to have context. Whatever happens on the field happens on the field. Someone wins, someone loses. We don't have to hear about someone who's got liver cancer that overcame it and this guy is participating. It doesn't really matter. You either won it or you lost. And that's harsh when you look at it from a sports standpoint, but that's the way life should be. There are tough consequences in life. I just don't get this whole, we have to have a backstory to make things more palpable for the public.
Man, I definitely would have used that at some point. I sit there and relentlessly mock those backstories when they're on
all the time.
Then the Olympics is a great example. My God, I get it in the Olympics because the audience for the Olympics is women and men and old men and young women and old, it's everybody. So they are trying to appeal to a non-sports fan to get them interested in the competition. So I get that a little more. It doesn't make it any less annoying, which is so annoying. But in the NFL, it's the same thing we always talk about. Who's your audience? We don't need to know all this. I was listening to the Pet Peeve episode, and I relayed that story about, I can't remember who the player was, but the announcers are saying how he slept on the floor in his first year at Alabama or at Georgia. It was
Najee Harris.
Yeah, Najee Harris slept on the floor because that's where he was used to sleeping in his house. And they asked Najee about it after the game, like minutes after the game. Oh my God, we didn't know this about you. He's like, nah, dog, I slept in the bed. Like if there was a bed, I slept in the bed.
Jim Nantz is the worst at that, right? You ever watch like any golf, show that he's doing? They're walking up 18. The son of a steel worker who used to sneak onto courses and on the weekends and used to get kicked out before hitting too many balls into the night. Like, who cares? Fucking guy 17 under par. I don't give a shit what he did when he was 12.
Not only that, but almost every golfer grew up with a family that had access to a country club.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. No, there's not very many sons of steel workers.
Right. This isn't Chaz Michaels from Blades of Glory and the underground Detroit skating.
Yeah.
Worked his way up to it.
And I want to hear Nance, walking up the 18th, that son of a billionaire hedge fund had a golf club in his hand at a martini at age of 4. Spoiled brat from as far back as you can think.
We do have a couple of questions from Brian Peacock, and as you can imagine, they are pretty derisive. So the first is directed at Mike. So will Mike actually prioritize work over the pod or the pod over work during the regular season?
No, the pod would take preference during the regular season. I would have immediately looked at the scheduled thing, saw it on a Wednesday, and given them enough notice that I wasn't going to make it. So that's a fair question.
Let me ask a follow-up question to that. Would it depend on a giant loss or a win? I figure the angry fans, a loss is probably more you want to vent and get it out than a win.
Yeah,
if they have a cushy win, like, you're okay, maybe you can miss that one. But if they have a brutal loss,
I could see skipping an Eagle loss. Yeah.
Well, that's a given that we're going to lose. It's Eagles.
I can't sit on here and talk about a punt return with no time left, or I can't do it. No.
And I don't really think I'm going to justify this with an answer, but did he bogart all the money so that Saquon can't have any or any of the other Giants? To me, Daniel Jones is not overpaid. Daniel Jones is probably, at the end of this season, by the way, Daniel Jones will probably be the 14th highest paid quarterback in the league.
Yeah. And he's probably about the 14th best quarterback in the league.
It's a quarterback league. It's you got to pay the quarterbacks. That's just that you have to.
Yeah, you do. The idea that anyone could look at the Giants situation with Saquon and Daniel Jones, and I know it is simple, it is low-hanging fruit for the media to say, they paid him, now they don't have the money to give Saquon. They had plenty of money to give Saquon. They ended up giving him what he's worth on this market. It may be less.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you criticize that? We have Saquon Barkley tied up for 2 years if we want to force him to be. I hope it doesn't come to that, but
and if you think about it, Dak Prescott had signed a 4-year, $160 million contract. So he's making roughly the same or more than Jones. The question back to Brian Peacock is he hamstringing the Cowboys?
Yeah,
Matter of fact, they couldn't re-sign Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, they couldn't bring Zeke back, man.
By the way, 2 things we didn't say. Finally, the Delvin Cook is with the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
I did mention that a couple weeks ago prematurely. And then Ezekiel Elliott is with the Patriots.
Yeah.
I'm happy about it. I can't complain. I mean, look, they adds to a deep running back room. If we get a couple injuries, we're good to go.
Yeah.
But according to all Jets fans, we just trade our 4th string running back for a starting offensive tackle. All will be great.
Why can't they do that? I don't,
Why can't you?
I don't know. I pulled that trade off in Med. I don't understand why it's not happening here. I've actually heard that as an argument before, by the way.
We did go a little long tonight, but you guys got anything else?
I have one thing to clean up. It was Carlton Fisk who
Fisk.
Yeah, who yelled at Dion, and you guys would actually like this. So he said to Dion, as Dion was not running out his fly ball, "Run the effing ball, you piece of shit." That's what he said to him.
Were those White Sox uniforms that had the white and then it had the socks in the middle?
Yeah.
You mean like the type of like shirt you'd pick up at the dry cleaner, like with a collar and all that, right? Yeah.
That was the one from the 70s where they wore the shorts.
Oh my God, the shorts.
I forgot about the shorts.
Awful.
So you guys will like this, but Fisk was asked after the game, because that got picked up on a hot mic. So Fisk was asked afterwards what's going on. You guys will like this. He said there's a right way and a wrong way to play this game. It's the Yankee pride and Yankees pinstriped involved here. some of these guys have got to be turning over in their graves. I play for the other team, but that even offends me.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And he's a Red Sox.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Fisk bringing it.
All right. Well, we are the Angry Giant fans and a Jet fan. Hit us up at angry_3 for questions. We need a more variety of questions than just Brian Peacock. So send them our way. But we'll be back next week to talk about the recap of the Panthers game, talk about the latest Jets game, talk about Hard Knocks, and any player moves. So you guys got anything else before we say goodbye?
All good.
A good one.
All right. Well, we will see you next week.